I hid my intuition and my spirituality for 20 years. And I'm making this video today, which is very different, maybe a bit more of a personal story, because I think I might not be the one as I was in the spiritual closet, and maybe you are too. Maybe you are reserving that side of you for a few friends, few people that you know you can trust, you know, those woo-woo rituals, manifestation, meditation, those books that you read but you are covering the cover because you don't want anybody to see what you're reading. And I deeply understand that and respect it, but let me tell you a little bit more of my story of how I was hiding that side of me, as well as my intuition and the fact that I was receiving messages from my guides, from my soul for many years and could not talk about it. Hey everybody, so if you don't know me, I'm Jenna Blossoms. I'm French, I live in Thailand, and for 10 years now I've been sharing about spirituality, about intuition, about life mission, and so many other spiritual and personal growth topics in the French-speaking world. I've written several books, created oracle cards, and many other projects and adventures, and it's been beautiful and very successful. But before that, this was not my reality, or at least this was something I was pretty much hiding. Well, I am French, right? And in France, it's very much an intellectual country. It's a country where, you know, religion and the government have been separated for centuries, and that is very proud to admit or to say that we are the country of les Lumières, meaning of the philosophers, of the thinkers, and it is very beautiful and it is a wonderful past and heritage. Nonetheless, I do believe that it leaves the spiritual people a bit outside of society, and that religion nor spirituality don't always find their place in this kind of society. And especially when, so I quickly realized when I was younger, and I was very much interested in those topics because I had an Italian side of my family who was very open. I had an aunt who was a medium. My mom would talk about her premonitions in her dreams, and my grandmother would have some special prayers and rituals that she would do when we were sick, and all of those stories with spirits and with messages and synchronicities. And so I grew up with that, but it was the only something that women would talk about a bit in secrecy, right? And so I was fascinated, and I felt that calling me. And I got my intuition really started when I was young. I could feel that it was there, but it didn't have a place. And at school, every time I was talking about death or, you know, connecting with spirit, people did not understand, and I felt like it was not the place. And I had a better time when I did not talk about those things and when I just fit in, you know. And I was a very good student, I was a good pupil, and so I continued my journey, went into my higher studies, and went to university. A great university in Paris, studied political science, so a world of thinking, a world of intellect, and it was fascinating, extremely interesting, and I was very, very much succeeding, you know, I loved it, but I was hiding every spiritual aspect of me, or keeping it just for the few people that I know were open to that. And it was not easy because I was already kind of the weird one in a way. I was a vegetarian or a vegan, I was traveling to India, I would go to events that my classmates did not understand, things like that. And, you know, when I was going to university, or even before that, high school, and I did 5 years, I got my master's degree, and I was talking to my guides on the way to school, I was receiving messages, and it was growing inside me, really growing. And it was really hard. And I want to mention that the few times where I said or I led other people to understand that I had a certain type of faith, it was not well received. One person, actually, a friend of mine, once told me, "Oh, I thought you were more intelligent than that, than believing in all those stuff." And I hadn't even shown how much stuff I believed in. I just expressed really that I had faith, that I believed in God. And I know in the US it's much more common, right? But in France, there are several types of faith, but it's depending on in my experience, depending on the kind of environment you're in, it's not always very well understood. And some people might think, because they are more intellectual and intelligent in the way that society portrays intelligence, that believing is for the weak of mind, or believing is for people who have not embraced science enough, that kind of thinking. And so years happened, and it became harder and harder, because when you are truly on a spiritual path, this is not only a little side of you, this is, I don't want to say your identity, because your identity is so vast and rich, but this is the way you live your life, the way you are in relationship with others and the world and yourself. This really, designs how you live your life. And so at some point it becomes really hard to put it on the side, because it's calling you and it's pushing you to live your life a certain way. And so my intuition called me, my guides called me again and again. And after I did my master's degree, I was working in an NGO, a big NGO. I was working in Paris at the headquarters, and I was supposed to then go on a mission in Africa. And it was, again, very interesting, because from a very early age I wanted to have a positive impact on the world. And so I thought, why not use that degree and those languages that I speak and that open mind on the world to do some good and to work into the humanitarian field. And so logical thinking again, right? And so I did do that. My mind was very fulfilled, because my mind is thirsty for knowledge and for understanding the world. And so it was interesting. But when the mind thirst is satisfied, what happens? The soul, the heart is growing weary, and it's becoming really harder and harder to feel aligned, to feel fulfilled, because the heart is really the one who has the key to that fulfillment. And so I felt that call much more intensely than before. I started to feel very depressed. I started to feel like something big and very frightening was calling me. And when I completely surrendered to that, one day I remember it was during a coaching session, the first one I've ever done, and I received that message clearly that said, I now am ready to embrace my life's mission, my life's purpose. And that changed everything, because it made me realize, and it was not just like a thought that, I was thinking, it was just a clear message from my soul, and making me realize, I was like vibrating and shuddering and getting super hot when that sentence arrived, like my whole body was reacting to it. And I realized how afraid I was to really let my true colors show, and how difficult it was to accept that this side of me was wanting to express itself, to really take the spotlight in my life. And so from that moment on, my intuition opened to another level. And every night for around 6 months, I was woken up in the middle of the night because I was receiving clear messages that I had to write, and messages about a lot of things. And my guides were telling me, you have to open a blog, you have to open a blog. And back then, I was like, no, I'm too busy. I don't think I will follow up, and nobody will read it. And I was still too afraid to, to write with my name. And then things happen. I told that story already in another video that I suggest maybe you can watch. But events happen, and I finally did the blog, and it went viral really sudden in that niche, right? Not in the world, but all of a sudden I was contacted by people who wanted to work with me, and I didn't offer anything really. I was invited to do a big conference, sort of like a TED Talk, but different, in France, with famous people and in front of hundreds of people. And I was 22 at the time, or 21, I'm not sure. And I could see that my guides were waiting for me to be ready, that I had been preparing for that because I had glimpses actually when I was younger, dreams and really visions of that future, but I locked it up, too afraid to see where it would take me. And when I finally started to say yes, they pushed the door wide open, and a lot of things happened then. And this was the start, really, and then I got a little bit more comfortable talking about it. I didn't want to use my real name. I didn't want to use any picture of me. I didn't want anybody that I knew from my life to know what I was doing. But then again, quickly, people started to know. I don't know exactly how, because I wasn't really advertising it, but you know how it gets. Someone knows it, and then the message, spreads. And a few months later, I quit my job. I started my YouTube channel. I didn't really have a business plan, or I wasn't thinking I would make a lot of money doing it. And I started doing intuitive reading for people. Again, just following my intuition, and I did that for a while. I received messages for people, and then it got again a bit overwhelming because of the amount of requests that I got. So I then was guided to write a book. My first book that I was writing when I was around 21, 22 got published maybe a year or two after, and this was the start. And now it's been almost 10 years that I've been sharing quite publicly my experience with spirituality. And even though sometimes now it's become more and more common, more and more mainstream, I would say, and I do not always recognize myself in that field, where I think it still lacks a lot of depth and contrast thinking. But it's true that I would have never believed my path or where I am today, and the kind of life that I live, very intuitive and still very intelligent in the way, if I can humbly say so, in the sense that I try as much as possible to also use my intellect and to nourish it and to always be learning and growing. Also in that aspect, I'm very much, grounded to the earth, living a kind of normal life, but it's not normal really when you also have access to different dimensions and ways of receiving information. But I wanted to share that story because I truly feel that a lot of people are still in the spiritual closet, are afraid to show their true colors, what they believe in, or they might just say what's comfortable. But we are called right now to be more and more authentic, to really own who we are. And this goes for our beliefs as well. I'm not saying by any means you have to shout it to everybody who's willing to listen, and to say to every person you meet, oh, this is what I believe in, this is the truth, or this or that. Not at all. Let's respect everybody's perspective and experience. And let's as well honor the intimacy and the depth of our spiritual path, which is always evolving as we are growing as human beings. But let's not hide it anymore. Let's see where it takes us. Let's see that when we really reconnect all of the different facets of ourselves, who we can be, because generally this is the most beautiful creation of all. It's the life that we can create. And so I hope this personal story has maybe inspired you or helped you reflect on your path, on what you hide and what you show, the people you decide to be honest with, and again, the people that you know it's not interesting sharing that facet of yours because it's too personal, and that's also okay. Again, it's very important to respect your boundaries and to know when you feel safe to share what you believe in or the way you navigate life, I guess. But I think I wanted to share that we are called to own who we are. And if you've liked that video, please let me know if you have questions or other topics that you find interesting that I might do a video on. Please let me know, and don't forget to subscribe, to leave it a thumbs up, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.